Hi, boys and girls. I want to continue reading the story Night at Dawn, written by Mary Pope Osborne. Remember that this is a Magic Treehouse story, and it's the second book in this series. I want you to predict right now what you think this book might be about. I also want you to think, is this where they are? Is it today, or is it long ago, or is it in the future? When do you think this, where they go, where do you think it might be? Okay, so chapter 2, which is leaving again. No one's here, Annie shouted down. Jack thought about going home. Then he thought about all the books in the treehouse. He started up the ladder. When he was nearly to the treehouse, he saw light in the distant sky. Dawn was starting to break. Now let's stop. What does that mean? So he's looking off. He's on the ladder. He looks out and it says dawn was starting to break. Now, does it mean it's going to be broken? Say no. Okay, when somebody says dawn is starting to break, that means it's almost the morning, and then it's the time has passed. And so now instead of being nighttime, and now the sun is coming up. Okay, so that's what they say that. Sometimes they even say, there's a song from an old time ago where it says that morning has broken. That means it's starting to come up. Okay. He crawled through a hole in the floor and took off his backpack. It was dark inside the treehouse. Annie was shining her flashlight on the books scattered about. They're still here, she said. She stopped the light on the dinosaur book. It was the book that had taken them to the time of the dinosaurs. Remember the Tyrannosaurus? Asked Annie. Jack shuddered. Of course he remembered. How could anyone forget seeing a real, live Tyrannosaurus Rex? The light fell on a book about Pennsylvania. A red silk bookmark stuck out of it. Remember the picture of Frog Creek? Said Annie. Of course, said Jack. That was the picture that had brought them home. There's my favorite, said Annie. The light was shining on a book about knights and castles. There was a blue leather bookmark in it. Annie turned to the page with the bookmark. There was a picture of a knight on a black horse. He was riding toward a castle. Annie, close that book, said Jack. I know what you're thinking. Annie pointed at the knight. Don't, Annie. We wish we could see this guy for real, Annie said. So what do you predict might happen? What do you think? So think about in your head what you think might happen. No, we don't, shouted Jack. They heard a strange sound. Neigh! It sounded like a horse neighing. They both went to the window. Annie shined the flashlight down on the ground. Oh, no, whispered Jack. A knight, said Annie. A knight in shining armor, riding a black horse through the Frog Creek woods. Then the wind began to moan. The leaves began to tremble. So what do you predict is going to happen? Okay, think it in your head. What do you think is going to happen? It was happening again. We're leaving, cried Annie. Get down. The wind moaned louder. The leaves shook harder, and the treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. He shivered. The air was damp and cool. So where do you think they are? Are they still in Frog Creek? Let's find out. The sound of a horse whinny came again from below. Nay! I think we're here, whispered Annie. She was still holding the castle book. Jack peeked out the window. A huge castle loomed out of the fog. That means it was there. He looked around. The treehouse was in a different oak tree, and down below, the knight on the black horse was riding by. We can't stay here, said Jack. We have to go home and make a plan first. He picked up the book about Pennsylvania. He opened it to the page with a red silk bookmark. He pointed to the photograph of the Frog Creek woods. I wish, no, said Annie, and she yanked the book away from him. Let's stay. I want to visit the castle. You're nuts. We have to examine the situation, said Jack, from home. Let's examine it here, said Annie. Come on. He held out his hand. Give it. Annie gave Jack the book. So this is a picture of where they are. Okay, you can go home. I'm staying, she said, and she clipped the flashlight to her belt. Wait, said Jack. I'm going to take a peek, a teeny peek, she said, and she scooted down the ladder. Jack groaned. Okay, she had won. He couldn't leave without her. Besides, he sort of wanted to take a peek himself. He put down the book about Pennsylvania. He dropped the castle book into his pack. He stepped onto the ladder and headed down into the cool, misty air. All right, the next chapter is chapter 3, Across the Bridge, and we'll find out what happens next.